Thank you for joining us today. My name is Miriam, and I'm a certified probate and trust specialist, and I work with families that are going through probate or have a trust and need assistance with real estate. And today we have attorney Elijah Keys with us, and he's going to talk to us about many things related to estate planning and also special needs trust, and I will let him tell us a little bit about himself.
Thanks so much for having me, Miriam. Thanks for also taking the trip to our office. I appreciate that.
You're welcome.
So I am Elijah Keys. I am a certified specialist in estate planning. That means that when I was done being an attorney, I thought it wasn't good enough, so I went back for more pain. And that means that I'm certified by the state bar as a specialist. It's kind of hard to get that. I also have what's called an LLM in tax. That means that I have a master's degree in estate planning and estate tax, past a law degree. And what we focus on here is we really focus on the intersection of two different areas, subspecialty of estate planning. We focus on individuals who have a lot of assets, so high net worth, but we also focus on people who have special needs. And so we kind of run the gambit in between those two. It's a really unique area, and I'm really excited to do it.
Wonderful. So you have so much experience. As I was mentioning earlier, so many people in this space speak highly of you.
Because really nice.
Yeah, because of your experience and what you bring and the difference between you and other people. Can you tell us, going back, how did you select this profession?
It's a really interesting question. So 22 years ago, I was in a master's program at San Jose State focusing on communication studies, and I was a debate coach. I was a minor professor in the debate program, and they had given me a scholarship to study communications as a career. And I realized after one semester that was not where I wanted to go. Okay. But I realized that I also could, as a debate coach, and we won awards internationally, so we were a good team, that I could actually represent positions that I didn't necessarily agree with personally.
Right.
And so I decided I was going to go to law school. And so I chose the law school that I went to called Golden Gate, because I had met my wife at the time, and I wanted to stay local. I had offers in different places, but I stayed here. After law school, I had an offer at a real estate investment firm to be an associate, and that was in mid-2009. And that was when the dot-com or real estate market crashed.
Oh, yeah.
I don't remember which one it was. And my associate's offer got yanked. And so they offered me a position in the tax program and asked me if I would teach at the law school.
Oh, wonderful.
So I taught at the law school. I did part-time real estate attorney work, and I took my master's degree in tax. And then how did I move to estate planning? In my last year of law school, I did 40 informational interviews.
Wow. So
interviews with different attorneys, trying to understand what type of practice they did, what they enjoyed, what they didn't enjoy. I also had 6 or 7 internships in law school just to try to get as much experience and exposure as I could. Wasn't paid for any of them. I paid my own way to go. And so at the end of law school, I had all this experience and all these contacts, and somebody called me for a job in estate planning.
Wow.
And so I started in elder law, representing individuals in regular estate planning, as well as incapacity crisis planning when somebody is older. And we do a lot of that here now.
Wow. I don't think I've ever heard that term.
Imagine for a moment that you have a husband and wife, and one of them has moderate level dementia.
Okay.
Most attorneys will say no because they don't understand how to approach, talk to, or assist a family with dementia.
Wow.
Dementia doesn't mean that you can't make decisions. It simply means that you forget what you did.
Right.
So some people say that means a lack of capacity, but it doesn't actually. Capacity is a paradigm. It's an entire spread of decisions. And a doctor saying that you should not manage your finances doesn't mean that you can't. It doesn't mean that you can't make other decisions.
Right.
So if you shouldn't pay the electricity bill, you shouldn't pay it because you might forget to pay the water bill, and you might pay the electricity bill 4 times.
Okay.
Happens a lot.
Okay.
Kind of the first defining feature of when someone has a serious mental issue,
right,
or maybe moderate dementia, is that they start paying some bills and not paying others.
Yes.
And that happens all the time. So a big thing that happens in our office is that an adult child will call us and will say, hey, we heard that you help families with dementia. My dad has dementia. Can you help me? It happened today. We had a client who came in. The father has dementia. They didn't know what to do. They need assistance. We interviewed him, and we didn't ask him if he remembered what he did yesterday.
Right.
We asked him about his family. We asked him about his career. We asked him about his affairs, his assets, what does he want to do. He gave very clear, direct answers, even though he can't remember what he had for breakfast.
Yes.
He knows what he wants, and that's enough.
So in that situation, then you can help family members in that sense. And you just basically interview them. Is that what you do to make sure that they are suitable for that type of help?
There's two lines that we have to work with.
Okay.
We have to work with, I'm not a doctor, okay?
Right.
But the line for whether someone has capacity is a legal line. It's not a doctor line.
Okay.
It's a legal line that says that someone understands the nature of their action, they understand the consequences of the action, and they understand the alternatives of their action. Some decisions have a higher bar than others. You might imagine buying a home and having a loan is a fairly complicated sort of exchange, right? But what if you could choose someone to do that for you?
Right.
That's a different type of exchange. I trust my son, I don't have a son, but I trust my son to be my representative to buy this home because I know I want it, but I can't deal with the pressure.
Yes.
That's a different question.
Yeah. Wow, that's really amazing. I've never heard of anyone talking about this.
The state bar has asked me to write an article on it. I just haven't gotten around to it.
Yeah. I mean, you're so busy.
Well, I'm mostly busy because I'm not so good at delegating. So I'm working on it.
Yeah.
I'm a work in progress.
Me too. That's my only problem. So tell me about, as we're talking about that estate planning, and I've talked to other attorneys, but I want to get your input. Why do you feel it's absolutely necessary to have an estate plan?
Because the alternative is the default emergency plan for California. Every state has an emergency plan, right? The state's entire job is to set up a foundation of emergency principles or emergency protection so that people who cannot take care of themselves go with the default plan. For example, California has Medi-Cal, other states have Medicaid. If you can't afford insurance, the state will pay for you.
Yeah.
It's not necessarily the best option, and the options are very strict. Why are they strict? They're strict because the state has protections in place to make sure that you are not doing something that you don't otherwise want to do. Same type of thing happens in estate planning when the state has a default set of rules, but the default set of rules are extremely strict.
Yeah.
They're strict on purpose. Imagine that I say, that I ask my wife, would you please go to the store for me? Here's $5. That's fine. She can take the $5. She can go to the store. Does that mean she can spend $50? Have I authorized her to spend $500, $5,000, $5 million? Who knows? She's my wife. Obviously, she should be the person who I would choose.
Yeah.
But would someone really want their wife to manage everything? What if I had a second marriage and I had children from a prior marriage and I knew that my wife would totally take everything and take my children's inheritance?
Yeah.
The court can't know that. So the court has very strict procedures to protect you from yourself and from your loved ones.
Right.
That's why people need an estate plan. Some people need that default protection. They have a child that's stealing from them. They have no ability to sign documents. They've waited too long. Those people, absolutely, they need the court plan. They need a default emergency protective plan. Most other people don't.
Yeah.
So the way they get around that is you sign a contract. I sign a contract with you, allowing you to control my affairs because I trust you. I trust you. You are a trustworthy person. I care about you. I want to include you. I know that you're going to protect me, protect my family, protect my children.
Yes.
That's a trusting relationship. Some people never establish that, so they go with the judge. And now the judge is determining the nature of our relationship.
Exactly.
And that's the problem with estate planning that most people don't know. They say that, well, I don't really need that right now, so I'm not going to do that right now. And that's an okay thing to think. It really is. It's a completely okay thing. But it's a false positive.
Yeah.
False positive. It's a fallacy to say that because something has never happened, it never will.
Exactly. And I see that so often, or people, I think, believe, they trust their family, they trust their kids, and then something happens to them. And now the kids are fighting. Or one of them believes that they own the property, and then it becomes a chaos. And that's when the courts get involved.
Well, it becomes chaos because of two problems. Number one, it's immaturity between the relationships between the kids.
Yes.
Okay? So there are plenty of families where people don't do anything and the kids get along just fine. And then there are other families where they don't. What's the difference? In my experience, which is anecdotal, the children haven't really matured in their relationships, so they're still fighting each other as if they're teenagers.
Yes.
That's not everyone.
Yeah.
but it happens somewhat regularly. Maybe I see it more often because I'm an attorney.
Right.
But there's a second thing that happens, which is that the parents don't give their children clear expectations.
Right.
If they don't write something down, then we're left with verbal statements.
Yes.
And something could be misunderstood. It's actually very common that when someone has dementia, they speak to the emotional state of the person in front of them.
Right.
So I speak to your emotional state, and then when another friend sits in front of me, I speak to that emotional state, and I tell you one thing, and I tell the other person the other thing, and I don't remember what I told anybody.
Right.
So now everybody's trying to protect me, protect my wishes that I verbally said.
It might be different for each party depending upon who you talk to.
Yeah, and if it was never written down without any witnesses, now we have one individual who says, well, you're lying, and another individual that says you're lying, and now everyone has unmet expectations and everyone is going to lose out. When people feel that they're going to lose, or people feel that their parents' wishes aren't going to be fulfilled, you have a lawsuit.
Yeah.
It's automatic. I am going to protect my mother, therefore I am a better person than you, and you are taking from me as the beneficiary, therefore I am going to attack you, protect, attack, fight.
That's such a great point. I see it very often. If people do have an estate plan, which we're saying it's the best thing to do, I would imagine, to create a plan just in case something happens to their mother or father or whoever, or themselves. What happens when people go through probate? Mm-hmm. I know it's I see it very often because it's the type of real estate that I deal with.
Sure.
What would you tell families to avoid going through probate? And it doesn't have to be that they own a high amount of assets, right?
Yeah.
They can own one house or a couple houses. Do you have any advice for those type of families?
Let me clarify the question. Are you asking how to avoid going through probate, or what will you deal with when you're going through probate?
Can we do both?
Sure.
What to do to avoid, and then what will you expect?
So let's deal with what to expect, because that's a single question.
Yes.
What to expect during probate? It's a court process. The judge is there to make sure that someone's financial affairs are correctly closed. It's almost like closing a business, mm-hmm. where you have a manager who in the court is called an executor or a representative or an administrator.
Yes.
And that person is responsible for taking possession of all of the deceased person's assets. It's called gathering or marshaling. Mm-hmm. Then they have to inventory or list them and value them. Then they have to notify all the creditors, including Medi-Cal, that person has passed away. Mm-hmm. They have to pay valid creditors. And then we have this weird situation where we go into a big black box. Black box, by what I mean, is that we never know what sort of things are coming up in a probate, because it's dealing with someone's former personal life. I've seen probates where we had to sue people because of defamation. I've seen probates where we had to deal with lawsuits between siblings. I've seen probates where we had to continue a divorce case where someone was dividing assets.
Wow.
I've seen probates where we have to deal with the IRS, with the Franchise Tax Board. All of those cases, most of them can be completely avoided because someone could have made advanced decisions. Mm-hmm. But the end of the probate is distribution. And so most of the time when people are a beneficiary, they want to know how much am I getting and when am I getting it.
Right.
And that will take somewhere between 2 and 3 years, often, or longer. The longest probate, to my understanding, was in Louisiana, and it lasted 55 years.
55 years.
It was an argument between an estate and a city where it was bad wills.
Wow.
One person wrote a will with a lawyer, and then he wrote his own will. And we were fighting over which will was valid. And maybe they were, maybe they weren't, but the fight went on for 55 years because it was over a bunch of property.
That's a long time.
there's actually the probate of Prince, the artist formerly known as Prince.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he died about 8 years ago, and the last lawsuit between the siblings was filed April 2024. It's still ongoing. They're still fighting.
Right. I actually saw, it was such a crazy situation. We were selling a property and I think it was Tracy, and we were about to close and someone put a lien on the property. It turns out he had another partner, another woman that he was with in the past, and it came out they had a child, and so many things came out, and the wife was super upset because we couldn't sell the property anymore. Mm-hmm. There was a lien on the house. I think till this day, they haven't sold the property. And they're still dealing with the probate now, the civil lawsuit. Mm-hmm. So it's this thing that just keeps on going.
So one thing that you mentioned is you have to sell the house. And in a trust, selling a house is actually not so difficult.
Right.
The trustee or the person who's in charge of the trust at any one point takes possession of the home, and then they can sell it normally.
Yes.
But in a probate, you have a lot of limitations because you're under court supervision.
Yeah.
And the judge is in charge, not the executor, not the will, the judge is in charge. And so the judge has requirements. It must be an as-is sale, meaning that the probate cannot pay for repairs. You can't pay for termite damage. You can't pay for solar panels. You just have to lower the cost.
Yeah.
That's a problem, right? That actually lowers the value of the house much more than the cost of the repair, because now you can't use the bank loan to pay for the repair.
Exactly.
Right? Second problem with the probate is that each beneficiary must agree to the sale. There's something called a notice of action that is required.
Right.
So the executor either has to ask the court for permission to sell, which is a big problem in itself, or has to ask the beneficiaries, and some beneficiaries just might not agree. Now you have to go back to court. So I've been in probates where we had to deal with 6 different notices of action in a row, and the attorney charges hourly.
Right.
So for that action, so not only do we have to pay high probate fees, but we had to pay $6,000 to sell the house, which is a lot more money than you would have to pay to any other lawyer, because we had to re-notice 6 separate times, and it delayed everything.
Yeah.
It took them 18 months to sell that house.
Wow.
Because of all the probate issues. There was nothing else that we could do.
What happens if they just don't come to an agreement to sell the property? Are there different
The
routes?
the one action, if you remember in a probate, that the judge is in charge.
Yes.
And so there are default procedures to allow people opportunity to agree or disagree. The judge is interested in 3 things. The judge is interested in making sure that everybody has the opportunity to be heard. Okay, it's called notice. The judge is also interested in making sure that all the people who are responsible have done all the things that are required under the law to actually do that thing.
Right.
Okay. The third thing that the judge is interested in is the judge is interested in making it fair. So imagine for a moment that someone received notice, valid notice, but they were completely incapacitated. They had been in a hospital bed, they had severe Alzheimer's, they didn't know their name. Would the judge really think that that was fair?
Right.
And the answer is no. The judge wouldn't, because it's not fair. It's not fair to say that I get to take advantage of a little old lady who's in a nursing home because she doesn't know what day it is.
Yes.
That's not fair. So the judge is going to require the people to go through all these different steps. The problem with the probate is that you don't know what the steps are until you've gone through them. And
Exactly.
it's just hard.
But if someone wants to avoid all of that, they would create a trust.
They can create a trust. There's actually 3 ways to avoid probate.
Okay.
You might think so. Yeah.
Can you share those?
Sure.
Yeah.
The first way is joint ownership,
Okay.
but it only works once.
Right.
So I'm married. My wife and I own a Toyota Sienna. I'm dating myself because they call me a dance dad. I drive dance girls around all the time.
Yes.
Okay. So I also get glitter on my face on occasion.
Oh, is that what that was? The other?
Very embarrassing. It's very embarrassing. But that means that if I pass away, and my wife has a very strict rule that I may not die first. So
Yes.
if I pass away, then my name comes off of the car and her name stays on. It's joint ownership.
Yes.
Problem is that if she passes away, now the car is in her name and it has to go somewhere else.
Right.
Right. And that's where you have an issue. So joint ownership, number 1. Number 2 is beneficiary designation. So I have retirement accounts and bank accounts, and I have named beneficiaries to those accounts. It's required my wife should be number 1. She absolutely is. Number 2 is my trust. And it's that way for a reason. I have small children. And so if my children were to inherit a 401k, what can they do with it? They're under 18. They can't inherit it. We have to go to a judge because a child cannot inherit money. You need an adult to control it.
Yes.
So we've named a trust. So number 1 is joint ownership. Number 2 is beneficiary designation. Number 3 is an agreement that I have with someone else, a private trust agreement where someone else is going to control my affairs. And under contract, I have requirements that they will have to follow. And that's what a trust is. It's a private agreement between 2 people where one person says, I will protect you and protect your wishes. And the reason why you call it a trust is because I am going to believe that you are the right person, that you are a responsible, respectful person, and I'm going to pay you for your time. But I'm going to believe that you are a person who will protect the integrity of my wishes.
I love the way that you're describing it, a private agreement.
It is.
Because I think it's like a fearful topic to talk about. But it's pretty much something that you can discuss privately and agree upon with whoever you are selecting.
I think that we have to distinguish private in two different ways.
Yeah.
Okay. And the fear factor. So
Yes.
I'll discuss those separately.
Yes.
So private doesn't mean that you don't tell anybody else.
Yeah.
Private means that you have to set it up in a way that it's enforceable. And imagine for a moment that you have a contract between two people, but nobody else ever knew about it. And nobody was ever told, and there were no witnesses whatsoever. And you have this contract with this other person, and the other person got a whole mess of money. You might think, that's shady as hell, right? But what if there was a lawyer involved?
Yeah.
What if there's a lawyer that actually wrote it up? What if the lawyer had staff members? What if there were 6 or 7 people that observed this person? What if there was a written record? What if there were notes? What if there were categories? What if there was a notary? What if there was all this stuff? Suddenly you have support for a private agreement. The reason why I say it's private is that it's not subject to the public, whereas a probate is.
Right.
Worst thing about a probate, the absolute worst thing, is that the beneficiaries are declared to the public.
Yes.
And if you have someone who might have limited mental ability, maybe they're financially immature, maybe they're just young and impressionable, it's a treasure map.
That's such a great point.
You get to say, I'm going to say that there's $3 million passing through the court. And I say what the age of those people are, or you can look them up. We have to give their home addresses.
Yes.
We have to give their names. We have to give their information. So we have $3 million going to someone, and you look them up, and someone says, "Wow, he lives in a group home." That is my new best friend.
Yeah.
It's a treasure map.
I never thought about that. So whenever I get clients, I'll go to the courthouse and pick up documents for them. I look up their case, but I never thought about it in that way.
Predators do.
To do something harmful.
There's actually a situation that I've seen several times in the last quarter, which is very strange, quarter meaning 3 months,
Yeah.
that I've had 3 different families come in where the wife has been catfished by someone who says, "I'm the executive of a large company. I'm in love with you. I'm stuck in another country. Please send me money."
Wow.
And because the account is in her name alone, he can't stop it.
Right.
The current money that's been given away this quarter alone, $62,000 family number 1, $74,000 family number 2, $20,000 family number 3, he can't stop it unless he sues his wife in a conservatorship.
Wow.
That would have completely, 100%, no questions asked, stopped overnight if that wasn't a trust. He simply says to her, "You cannot be a trustee anymore." He goes to the lawyer again. The lawyer says, "I will draft up new documents." You go to the bank, you have her removed as trustee, it's over. And $320,000 is saved.
So in this case, she's what? She's
an individual person with no legal documents in place. Her assets are not held in a trust. The savings account is in her personal name. Being married is not enough. He does not have the right to invade her personal autonomy to make her personal decisions.
Wow.
The law does not allow you to invade your family members' things. You cannot do that.
Right.
Because it's in her personal name, he doesn't have access. He only has access through a judge. He doesn't want to sue his wife. She gives away $320,000.
So the best way to avoid that would be having that in a trust.
Having it in a trust, or even just having a power of attorney for finances.
Got it.
I mean, if they had a power of attorney for finances, he could ask a doctor to say she should not manage her own affairs because the evidence is she's giving all this money away. Any doctor would say, "Yeah, stop it."
Yeah.
Right? He can't stop it.
Yeah. You know what I often hear about, and people reach out to me because I talk about this on social media so often, elder financial abuse. And how there's so many people that are being victimized by either family members or strangers and are giving money away. And the family's very frustrated. Could be one sibling's frustrated because the other sibling is taking from the parent.
Right.
So in that situation, would you say it's a good idea to reach out to an estate planning attorney?
Yes.
Yeah.
The most important thing at that point, if someone's starting to lose capacity, is you need to find someone with a lot of experience in that field.
Yes.
And the thing that most attorneys won't tell you is that they actually specialize. Attorneys are a lot like doctors, where if you go to, my wife has an eye condition where she's slowly losing her vision. And to find the right doctor, we had to go to 4 or 5 different teaching hospitals to find the one person that did the one thing that she needed in the one way.
Right.
But when we found that right person, I took 8 pages of notes that day. We found out that we could have children that day. My wife was diagnosed with an illness that day.
Wow. Wow.
But we had to find the right person. Every doctor is not the same. You have some doctors who say, yeah, I can treat everything. Probably not. There's a quote from a really famous doctor show where they said that true expertise is not learned by doing one thing, by doing 10,000 things once.
Mm-hmm.
It's true expertise is gained by doing one thing 10,000 times. We do one thing, only one thing here. We use estate planning tools to protect people from other people and themselves.
So in that case, like you mentioned your example with your wife, how would a family know what to even look for in their attorney?
Yeah. So the best attorneys, I don't want to say that any one individual is better than another.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
But the attorneys that have the most exposure,
Okay.
meaning that they have done this for the most amount of time, meaning that they have made the rookie mistakes that you need them to make before they even get to your case,
Yeah.
is you need them to have been doing only estate planning, not real estate and estate planning, not personal injury and estate planning, not family on estate planning only for 10 years.
Right.
If they've done that, then at least they put in the time to have enough cases so that they won't make a silly mistake with you. Second thing is you want them to have some level of outside training and expertise.
Mm-hmm.
The way to do that is to either see whether someone has qualified as a specialist before the state bar.
Mm-hmm.
It's actually very difficult to become a specialist. That means that only the best ones do it. Or they could maybe have an advanced degree. There's 2 different advanced degrees. You can get a master's in law, which means someone has a law degree and then they went back for more pain, right? Mm-hmm. You can have a master's of law in estate planning or a master's of law in tax, which talks specifically about high net worth planning. Mm-hmm. Either one of those is going to get you there, but they really need to look for someone like that.
Okay.
Once they have that, then they need to look for the attitude, the personality of that person. Do they actually feel comfortable? Because when you sit down with someone like me, I'm going to ask you kind of some really intimate questions about your family.
Right.
And about the details and about how do you feel about people. Mm-hmm. I remember there was a very, very famous planner who actually went back to school after he had a law degree and after he had been a planner for 10 or 15 years, and he got a degree in counseling because he needed to understand how to explain very complicated things to his clients.
Yeah.
One of the best things that I ever did as an attorney is I asked people to watch me speaking to clients.
Yeah.
And I had those individuals, my staff members, and even strangers, just friends, who said, Elijah, I don't understand how you said that. Please say it again in a different way.
Right.
And so I would practice and practice and practice to say things in a way so that people could understand what I'm saying. I used to speak legalese. Now I try to translate it.
That's amazing. I actually learned that the hard way. I work with a lot of elderly people. Mm-hmm. And many times when I would send a listing agreement, when they hire me, they wouldn't sign it until a week. And I'm like, the link already expired. Just sign it. I'm texting or I'm calling. So I took a class to be a senior specialist to understand, because clearly there was a disconnect between me and the clients I was serving. Yep. And I wanted, although I'm very empathetic, passionate, sometimes I cry when my clients are talking to me based off their stories. So I'm very empathetic, but I wanted to understand what was the delay or what was the disconnect. And it was me not understanding where they were coming from. Yep. And I talked to one of my clients and she said, I'm fearful. Like, I work so hard for my house. I want to make sure that I'm reading it and I'm taking the time to decide and I'm not rushing to it. But I think nowadays, especially with social media and the way we live, we're so rushed that I was used to that. So learning more about the people I'm serving and how having that education. So I'm able to provide. And now it's really helped me in my business because I'm more patient and understanding and I don't rush to anything.
We were having the same problem in my firm where we would send out estate planning documents and then stay silent and say, please read them.
Yes.
And these are complicated documents. You've seen a lot of them.
Right.
They are complicated. They're difficult. They're not written in English. I cannot write a trust in plain English. Yeah. I have to use very specific words because they are part of the law. And the law uses this exact word, which in my mind means X thing, but in your mind means something else. Exactly. The word estate means 4 or 5 different things, and which one is it, yes. Right? So what we do now is every time we have a contract that goes to someone, I go over it with them and I explain it. Whenever we have estate planning documents, we don't give people the documents, we give them a summary. Yeah. And then they come back in here and they sit here with me, or I'm on some sort of online meeting with them, and we put the documents up on a screen and we go over them in detail,
Right.
explain them to them, walk them through it. It also helps them feel much more comfortable, because a lot of times people just get they're deer in the headlights and they feel so unprepared, and I feel responsible to make sure that people understand what they're doing. That also means that we have to charge more, right?
Yeah.
Because we take more time.
Yeah.
And some people don't want that, and that's totally okay. But I'm not going to provide information without helping people understand what it is that I'm saying. Otherwise, I'm speaking a foreign language, and I feel like people need a translator.
Absolutely. I think it's amazing that you do that. And if people want to know their attorney certification and experience, is there anywhere where they can find that at?
2 or 3 places. So if you're looking up an attorney, you can look them up on the state bar.
Okay.
It's calbar.org, I think, calbar.gov. And I don't remember the website. I go to it so much, but I don't remember.
Yeah, we'll look for it. I think it's...
If they go there, they can actually see whether someone's a specialist. They can also see whether someone has done maybe things that the bar thought were not so good in the past. Okay, so
Right.
they can look them up. They can also ask their professional network. So if they know a realtor, if they know a tax preparer, if they know a financial advisor, they can ask them for a referral, and they can gauge that referral. They can put limitations on it. Please send me to an estate planning attorney, but only send me to a specialist.
Yeah.
Please send me to an estate planning attorney, but only send me to someone who's been doing it for 10 years.
Yeah.
Please send me to an estate planning attorney, but someone who specializes in special needs, someone who specializes in elders. Please send me only to them.
Okay.
And they'll do that.
Yeah. I think it's great to look at that information and know who you're working with.
Mm-hmm.
And I was talking to a person yesterday, and his case was continued till next year because the attorney has made 2 mistakes on the paperwork. So the family's pretty upset, and they just don't understand. They said, we hired this attorney because we thought he knew what he's doing, and now he keeps on making mistakes. And the case is continued months out. So now it's till next year. So
yeah, I had a case continued on Wednesday, and we wanted it continued for a while, but the earliest date they could set it was the end of January.
yeah.
That's just what it is. I don't want to speak badly about any professional,
Right.
because everybody makes mistakes. I have made my fair share of mistakes.
Yes.
I really have, and I still make mistakes. The thing that I have done in my practice, not to talk bad about anybody else, but the thing that I have done is every time we make a mistake, we have a debrief here.
Mm-hmm.
We talk about how we made the mistake. What was the lead up to this mistake? Was there a way that we could have avoided it? Is there a way we can do better next time? Can we set up some sort of a procedure or some sort of a standard so that we can always not make the mistake? This happened last week, where we had 2 mistakes in exactly the same way happen very close together.
Yeah.
I said, okay, here's what I want you to do to one of my paralegals. I said, I want you to go ahead and add this one step, just one step, to our standard procedures, and every single time, even if it's not necessary, we want to check that step, because this obviously happens it's not uncommon.
Yeah.
So let's just handle it up front. That is the true benefit of someone that's been doing one thing for a long time, is that they'll solve issues that you don't even know about.
Yeah.
So the best attorney, the best one you can ever know, is one that you don't know that it's hard.
Right.
Because they handle the hard stuff. We handle the hard stuff here. So when clients leave, they say, wow, that was so easy.
Yes.
But then it belies the point. People don't know how hard it is. So
Exactly.
it's a catch-22.
I get that often. Like, I didn't know it was going to be this easy selling the house. And I'm like, you don't know what I went through and the nights that I couldn't sleep and cry. So it is a challenge sometimes, but I think if you're passionate about it, it's worth it.
This is where I live.
Yeah.
My wife reminds me quite often, the reason why I started this law firm is to help as many people as I could.
Yeah.
And I think that as we get better and better, as we age, I think it's almost like fine wine. We just get better and better and better.
Absolutely.
That's actually funny because I don't drink, but I can recognize a fine wine by smell. So
Yeah. I drink, so yes, it's true.
then I'll give it to you.
So let's talk about, I think I mentioned to you, I was looking for an attorney who, a client reached out and said, hey, I'm looking for someone who handles special needs trust.
Mm-hmm.
And I talked to a colleague and he was like, you need to talk to Elijah. He is amazing. I normally don't hear much about special needs trust. And I know a little bit about them, but I think it's such an important conversation to have. Can you tell us a little bit about what a special needs trust is?
Sure. A trust is an agreement between multiple people to hold property. It's really what it is. Mm-hmm. You can have a trust if I hand my pen to you. Will you please hold my pen? That's a trust if you say yes.
Okay.
But the special needs trust is more particular. It's a tool of the federal government. It's set up by California, but the key features are described by the Social Security Administration Code. It's kind of a mouthful. Mm-hmm. But what it's intended to do is you put money into this trust or property or whatever, and whatever money is held in this trust is not owned by the end beneficiary. Okay. So special needs in a lot of other states is called supplemental needs. And what it means is someone has some government benefit that they are receiving and they need it. Okay. They need it so badly and we don't want to interrupt it. If we give them this money, it might actually stop their benefits. It might cause those benefits to be canceled and they rely upon those. They need them. So the two benefits that the Special Needs Trust actually protects are called Medicaid. In California, it's called Medi-Cal. Mm-hmm. And Supplemental Security Income called SSI. That's a benefit paid to people from the Social Security Administration who are disabled and have not had the opportunity to work for a long period of time. I don't mean a long period of time since they worked, but since they were working, but I mean they have not accrued enough time in an employment workplace to pay into an insurance system, so SSI. Those two programs can sometimes be lost if you receive money in your own personal name. Got it. So the Special Needs Trust is a recipient. It serves as a substitute recipient and the trustee stands in the way. And if the Special Needs Trust is prepared correctly, then any money going into that trust is not counted as owned by the beneficiary. The beneficiary can keep their benefits. There's a second purpose of that trust, and that's just a feature of the trust itself. Yes. Is that when the trust receives money, it must be irrevocable, meaning, and the beneficiary cannot be the trustee, meaning that it's a control mechanism. Okay. It allows someone else to control those assets on behalf of a third party. Okay. I've set up special needs trusts for people who are completely healthy but are drug addicts. We know that they have very risky behaviors, and those risky behaviors are likely to cause them to become disabled in the future. Too much heroin is going to make you, lose your mind. Too much meth is going to make you psychotic. There's very, very common that people who are in that environment and that lifestyle are going to live very risky lives. Right. We put the money into a special needs trust. Number one, the trustee cannot give the money to the individual in such a way so that they hurt themselves. Yeah. And number two, they're going to protect them if they need benefits.
Wow, I never thought about that. So basically, for example, if I have a family member who's an addict or is disabled, the Special Needs Trust will allow that they keep their benefits if that's what they have. Yes. And someone else will be providing to them. The trustee will be the one. Wow.
That's right. I've seen, so there's a wide range of special needs trusts, but there's two basic types. Mm-hmm. And the types have to do with whose money is going in. Okay. So is it my money? If I'm the disabled person and it's my money going in, then we have type number one. It's called First Party Special Needs Trust. Okay. Limited number of people can create that. But my money goes in. And when I pass away, the beneficiary, my money is offered to pay Medi-Cal back for my benefits because it's considered a loan in that circumstance. Okay. Second type of trust is one that's set up by a family member. So you want to give to me, a disabled person. You create a third-party special needs trust. So let's distinguish that. Elijah, the disabled person, creates Elijah's special needs trust, and Elijah puts Elijah's money into Elijah's trust. And Elijah's chosen trustee then pays money to Elijah when Elijah needs it. And when Elijah dies, then Elijah's money is used to pay Elijah's benefits. First-party trust. Wow. Third-party trust is you create a special needs trust and you put your money into your special needs trust for my benefit. And you choose the trustee and you choose how it's used. And when I pass away, you choose where it goes.
Wow. That seems not that complicated. But it sounded, I think when I heard special needs, I'm like, I don't even know. Like people have asked me, do you have someone in particular? Like I said, this client, which I did refer him to your office.
Thank you.
But I had no idea. I'm like, I don't even know what they are. So it seems a lot more complicated, but I think it's extremely beneficial to someone who is disabled.
It can be. The rules in California with Medi-Cal have changed this year, January of this year. So in some cases, it's no longer required to have a special needs trust. So for anybody who's listening and they have a family member who has Medi-Cal and there is a special needs trust in place, it's actually time to have that revisited. Because in some cases, it's no longer necessary.
They will not lose their benefits? Or
Medi-Cal's rules have now changed where anybody can now get Medi-Cal. Someone that has $5 billion is eligible for Medi-Cal in California.
wow.
It's no longer a question of whether you're eligible. It's now a question of how much do you have to pay. It's a copay question.
Okay.
So it used to be that in California, you could only get Medi-Cal if you had $2,000 of assets or less. Now it's a rule, you have a limited amount, but hang on. If you have more than kind of a very limited amount of income, Medi-Cal says you have to pay your income first. And then when you lose the ability to pay anymore because you've spent all of your income, if there's anything left over for us to pay, then we take over. So there are situations where I've seen people have $10,000 of income per month. Medi-Cal says you're eligible. I won't pay a dime. Because Medi-Cal won't pay a dime because they can privately pay for all of their medical coverage. Medi-Cal only takes over in cases of severe emergency, and they're paying $8,000 a month for medical care.
Wow.
Because Medi-Cal says, well, just pay your fair share.
Wow. So this is something you can help people with.
Yep. That's what we do every day.
That's really amazing. So thank you for sharing that and talking about special needs trust. Like I said, it's something that I rarely hear about. So
Sure.
Is there anything specific that you want people that are listening to know about estate planning, or any advice that you would give to family members that have thought about creating a plan but have just not gone through with it?
There was, my daughter is in a martial art. And the master is is like a 7 times black belt.
Wow.
And she's a white belt. She's brand new. And of course I want her to receive good advice. And so he's lecturing her for a half hour. And she says, Dad, is it time to go? And I said, nope, you stay right here. You listen to that man.
Yeah.
But he said something that was really interesting. He said, which is it harder to get? My belt, which is a 7 times black belt, a black belt with 7 stripes, takes a lifetime to get, or the white belt? Which one is harder to get? And she said the black belt, and he said, no, the white belt is harder to get, because most people don't start.
That's a good.
Most people don't get started because they have some barrier.
Right.
Either they have an emotional barrier, they think that this is too difficult, and so they put it off.
Yeah.
They have a false sense of security. I haven't died yet, so I'm not going to die in the future. I'm fine, so I don't need this. Or they have some barrier where an intellectual barrier where they say, I have to understand everything about this. I'm learning things every day, so I don't understand everything about this, so you probably don't need to either.
Yeah.
So if someone can get past their own barrier, then they can help themselves and their family.
Yeah.
There's a second thing to understand, that professionals charge money. And the defining feature of the professional is not the cost that they charge. It's always what do you get for it.
Right.
You can imagine that Apple, the computer company, was started with a formation document that was 1 page. How much did they pay for it? They paid a lot of money for that 1 page. Why? Because of the person who put it together.
Exactly.
It wasn't about the document. Anybody can download a trust. They're free. You can go get a trust for basically free.
Yeah.
But how do you use it and what do you put in it? That's a different story.
That's such a great point, because people that ask me about an estate plan, many times people think I'm an attorney because I'm talking about this online, not about the legal, but my experience in selling real estate related to probate or trust. And
you also talk like lawyers.
Oh, okay.
That's probably because you were in the courts.
I used to work at the courthouse.
You used to work at the courthouse.
And they'll say, but it's so expensive. And I always remind them, it'll be way more expensive to go through probate. Yeah. And that money can go to your family instead of to attorneys and the courthouse. And, there's so many fees that you're not aware of. So I think creating a plan is number one.
Well, there's also something where some people, not everybody, but some people have difficulty understanding the stage of life that they're in.
Yeah.
And so whenever you're looking at someone's growth or use of their personal wealth, they have kind of 3 or 4 phases. They have an accumulation phase where they're saving, right? They have young children, they are buying a house, they're investing in retirement, they're investing in their career. Then they have a maintenance phase where maybe they're middle-aged or they're in their 50s, where they're saying, hey, I'm still working, but I'm scaling back. we have enough money to take the family on vacation, but we want to live within our income.
Yeah.
And then there's a third phase, which is the spend down phase. It's the saving phase that people have been waiting for. They've been waiting for this time that they get to spend their money. And it's not about spending the money. Some people just have a lot of difficulty parting with something that they worked so hard for. They did. They worked really hard for their stuff. They spent an entire lifetime saving for this. They don't want to give it away to some overweight, balding Jewish guy in an office somewhere in Milpitas. I get that. I totally get that. But at the same time, expertise comes with a cost.
Yeah.
My favorite quote from a lawyer was Abraham Lincoln. And he said, if I had to chop down a cherry tree, if you gave me 8 hours to chop down a cherry tree, I would spend 7 hours sharpening my axe. The reason why he said that is he said, if I'm going to chop down a cherry tree, I want to do it perfectly. I want to do it exactly. I want to do it with prestige. I want to do it so that it looks so easy. I want to do it so that it's so good for you. It's good for the tree. It's good for the cherries. It's good for everyone. So I'm going to sharpen my axe.
Yeah.
The best attorneys have been sharpening their axe for so long, and they're so good at it, that you should just pay for their time. Not because I'm unilaterally special in any way. I'm not. I'm just a guy, but I happen to be really good at this one thing.
Yes. And you are really good.
Thanks.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
So is there anything else that you want to share? If someone wants to reach out to you, how can they get more information?
Sure. So we have a website, keyslawgroup.com. That's KEYESLAWGROUP.com. We also have a YouTube channel, The Keys to Your Legacy. We have a podcast. I'm actually really proud of the podcast, and the ones that I like the most are ones where I actually like the person.
Yeah.
And it's a nice conversation, and I enjoy it. I enjoy it. I don't know if anybody else enjoys it, but I do. We have blogs, we have handouts, we have booklets that we give out, so many things. Just go to the website or look at the YouTube channel. You can find a lot.
Many free resources, and you mentioned there was an orientation that you also host.
We host seminars from time to time. We don't do them very often simply because when we do a seminar, we oftentimes have so much work that comes in at once that we just stop taking clients for a while.
Yeah.
But we do them from time to time. And so we put those up on our website, and we have a newsletter that goes out to clients. Easiest way to go and get in contact with us, go to the website, subscribe to the YouTube channel, get the newsletter, and then just start watching. The best people always, you can see people by their actions, Trust what people say, but watch their actions. You'll know who they are, and you'll see pretty clearly who we are.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
And I appreciate you sharing your space with me.
Thank you.
Thank you.